The next session that we have here is called Essential Support. Julia and I had absolutely no idea at all how to run a campaign, and we will be forever grateful to those people who've helped us along the way. The next speakers have been, I was going to say, our 3 pillars of wisdom. At the moment, the 3rd pillar is still travelling here. I hope this 3rd pillar will arrive shortly, but they have been our pillars of wisdom. Extraordinarily busy people. They gave us their time, their knowledge, their networks. They used their influence on our behalf. And I'm going to name all 3, but the middle one might dash in halfway through. And I want to say that they will each or both speak, and then there will be an opportunity for you all to kind of both ask questions and give your own opinions and comments, so we can make it into more of a conversation between us all. Jeremy Hughes, Chief Executive of Alzheimer's Society, contacted us, I think, the day after the piece that I first wrote in The Observer was published, certainly very swiftly. So he was absolutely there from day one, and the advice and the generous practical support of Alzheimer's Society throughout has been absolutely crucial for us. We are eternally grateful to them. Then Jane Cummings, who's the Chief Nursing Officer for England, who is on her way, I believe, has been dynamically helpful and effective, and everything she committed herself to do for us in order to connect us to the network of nurses, she did kind of at once, before we even had time to breathe almost. It was amazing. And then there's Professor Alistair Burns, the National Clinical Director for Dementia at NHS England, and he has been unfailing in his help, which included writing letters to every hospital chief executive urging them to implement John's campaign in their hospital, and we are extraordinarily grateful to him. So when all 3 or all 2 have spoken, there'll be time for questions and comments, and I hope you'll want to do that. But in the meantime, please welcome these pillars of wisdom.
Good morning, and thank you to Julia and Nikki for such an amazing campaign. I don't know why, Julia and Nikki, you're grateful to Alzheimer's Society. We're grateful to you, because Alzheimer's Society is all about making a difference. It's all about enabling people to think and act differently about dementia. And we can't do anything without the motivation and the drive of the individuals, and our job is just to support and enable people to make that difference. Now, in many ways, we're about expanding the way in which society responds to dementia across all aspects of society. And I must apologise for having to run out of the door at 11 o'clock because I'm being sent to Coventry, and that's literally not metaphorically, because I'm going to meet with E.ON, the energy company, to think about and talk to them, because they're committed to their staff and their the meter readers and everybody involved in relating to people in energy supply from them being more responsive to people living with dementia. So it's great to see that we're actually spreading the net, and we're getting people who previously haven't even thought about it, people who haven't thought about what happens when a meter reader arrives on a doorstep of somebody who's living on their own with dementia, who's confused and lost and doesn't quite know what to do, and the vulnerability of that individual, and how you can turn that on its head and make the meter reader part of a supportive community. So that's why I'm going to disappear. But the interesting thing I thought about coming here is that whilst we're about pushing the boundaries and changing the way the whole of society thinks and acts about dementia, because there is no treatment, there is no cure, we're pushing hard with the research that we fund to get closer, but we're still a long way from that. We've had no new drug for any form of dementia for 10 years, which is quite staggering when you think that there's a new drug for cancer every few months. So we have a long way to go. But I thought, while we're trying to push the boundaries, what John's campaign has highlighted is that there are some fundamentals that need to change. The way in which people with dementia are treated when they arrive at hospital and when they stay in hospital, the way their relatives are treated, isn't right, hasn't been right. My dad had dementia, And he used to have blackouts. It wasn't related to his dementia, he had blackouts. And when he was in a care home, they had this appalling system whereby every time he had a blackout, even though 5 minutes later he'd be fine, they called an ambulance. And he was taken to hospital, and then he spent 3 days normally in hospital, totally disorientated, without the support that he needed, and then took back to the care home and recovered over another few weeks, and then the same thing happened again. So there was something just fundamentally wrong with the fact he went to hospital, but then in the care he got in hospital and the isolation and the confusion. So when I saw Nicky's article, it just resonated with me. And as I say, Alzheimer's Society's job, if you like, is to respond to people and say, we're there to back you, we're there to support you, what can we do to help? And then I got June's letter that Julia sent me. I get lots of letters, but I don't often get a letter like that. And that just reinforced to me that this is a raw nerve of humanity. This is something that needs to change. It needs to be different. I put that together with our own finding from thousands of people across the country about what everyday living and everyday hospital care is like for people with dementia and their family carers. And we did a survey as part of our Fixed Dementia Care campaign, which is looking at different parts of the health system and how good or bad it is about supporting people with dementia. And the survey we did of more than 500 people affected by dementia across the country found that 92% thought hospitals were frightening for people with dementia. 57% felt that people with dementia were not being treated with understanding and dignity. And only 2% thought that hospital staff understood the specific needs of people with dementia. So you could see the challenge that this is people who had direct living experience today about what it's like to have somebody with dementia in hospital. And some of the things we heard were quite frightening. We had examples of people who were being treated with excess force, such as being handcuffed to their bed in order to keep them in bed and stop them wandering around the hospital. Not being supported to eat, and that's so typical. We saw so many cases of a tray of food being put down in front of somebody and then being taken away by the hospital assistant half an hour later with nothing having been eaten. Not because the person wasn't hungry and didn't need nutrition and particularly hydration, but because they didn't realise they did. And nobody stopped to think. Nobody had a chance to think. People not being given the right pain medication or medications in the correct form, people being left alone in wards or busy A&E departments, people being let in wet or soiled sheets, people in a whole number of ways being on their own. Now, what Nicky's campaign and what Julia and John's campaign and Julia and Nicky came and said to me was, this isn't just about the NHS doing something differently. The cost neutral, which Nicky took on heart, was a bit of advice saying you've got to find a way of changing this without asking the NHS to spend money, because that's going to be incredibly difficult right now. It's all about acting and behaving differently. And it's very simple. It's saying that in all the pressures of running a hospital, in all the daily pressures on a ward where half or more of the people may well have dementia, you can't expect the hard-pressed staff on their own to get everything right. They're running around, they're chasing their tail, they can't actually cope on their own in a cash-strapped, badly resourced often, outdated often, health system that we have with old buildings and all the things that make life difficult in running a hospital. But what you can do is enable family members, carers, supporters, people who love the person in hospital, help the staff in hospital. So this is not about confrontation, this is about enablement. This isn't about saying you, the hospital, are getting it wrong. It's saying we, the community, can work with you to get it better. And the point that Paul made was fundamental to me. This is about the rights of individuals to be living and supported in their home, in their hospital, in their community, in the way they should be. And why can we do it for children, but not for equally dependent people with dementia who are dependent on their family carer, their son, their daughter, or their spouse to look after them? Why is it that when Johnny falls over in the playground, it's assumed that the mother or father will be in the hospital alongside Johnny or Mary and will be sitting there and be able to stay as long as they like to support that person day and night, if necessary, in their care and support? And what we've done and what has happened through John's campaign, through the dynamism of the people in this room, led so ably by Nicky and Julia, is that we've said, we can change that. We can make a very simple difference. We can enable family carers to be there alongside the person that they care for whenever they want. Now, the important thing is that this is a right, not an obligation, and I think that's a really important control. We're not saying that family carers have to be there and have to take on responsibility, because many might not be able to do that, and it's a point I made very early on to Nikki. This is about opportunity rather than requirement. And in many cases, it may be that the family carer themselves has a whole number of health challenges and problems that need to be addressed. So assuming that they want to, in the more extreme case, for example, sleep on a camp bed next to their relative in the hospital, can be a wrong assumption. But within those boundaries of making sure it's not an expectation, our experience is most people feel that if they're invited in more ably to be a partner in the care and support of their person with dementia, their family member with dementia, they want to be that. They want to be that partner. They don't want to just hand it over. So this campaign, to me, is a great example of how we can work differently. There are three components that I think stand out and make this an exemplary campaign. Not just the results it achieved, but three components of the ingredients that made almost 400 hospitals now to have signed up. Firstly is the power of the individual. It's a real salutary lesson to all of us that politicians think they change the world. They don't. The people who change the world is us. And one person can start something which leads to transformational change. And that's what Nikki's done. And then with Julia, two people, and have made that difference. So just remember the power of the individual, that we can make that happen. Secondly, the power of the media. And as Paul said, talking to him earlier, what I love about this campaign is showing the media as a force for good, sort of unadulterated good. Sometimes I get a bit annoyed with other campaigning newspapers like the Daily Mail, who seem to campaign for good on the back of having a go at somebody and being quite adversarial. And they achieve results, yes, but this is a different kind of campaign. This is about playing to humanity, playing to what's good in society, what's good inside all of us. And the Observer is a fantastic example of that. And the way they supported John's campaign is incredible. So the media with the individual. But then the third part is the power of all of us working together. If it wasn't for all the people in this room, if it wasn't for literally thousands of people across the country, this would still be a conversation between me, Nikki, Julia, Paul, and a few handful of people sitting, as it were, around the kitchen table saying, wouldn't it be good if? The only people that turns the if into the reality is all of you and all the people who've been engaged. So those three ingredients of the inspiring individual, the media backing, and then the individuals working together, I think is what's so special. And we do have that interest from the public. We've now got, staggeringly, we've just gone past the point of having 1.7 million dementia friends. This is 1.7 million people who've said they're interested in dementia, they've been to a Dementia Friends awareness session, and everyone who's become a Dementia Friend makes a commitment to some kind of social action, some kind of change. So we know people want to do it. We had a fantastic experience, which was the backing at the WI conference earlier this year for John's campaign. The Women's Institute, one of the bedrock organisations of Britain, are saying, we want to get involved in this camp, we're going to make that difference. So together, we can drive this forward. Now, we're not there yet. This is an enormous opportunity for celebration. I was saying earlier that we should have champagne, not tea and coffee, but maybe that's what's coming. But this is a great celebration of what we can all do. But we're not there yet. We just signing up to John's campaign is not the answer in itself. You've actually got to see it practically day by day. We've always said with dementia-friendly communities, and we've now got almost 200 towns and cities and villages committed to becoming dementia-friendly, but we've said it's all about becoming. You can't say that you've got there. It's a bit like back in the 1980s when a number of towns put up signs saying you're now entering a nuclear-free zone, as if the bomb would see the sign, turn around and go the other way. Sticking up a sign doesn't make the difference. Sticking up a sign saying we're committed to John's campaign doesn't mean that every person in that hospital and every patient and every family carer will experience the support they need. So we need to turn that into a living reality day by day. And that's the kind of action that I think should come out of today. How do we build on the initial sign-up? We're doing our bit from Alzheimer's Society in our Fixed Dementia Care campaign, saying that we've put out a call, which we're discussing with NHS England, to say that every hospital should make an annual statement of what good dementia care is. How are they measuring up? So there's an annual report, and one of those things can be what are they doing to live up to their commitment to John's campaign. So every year, somebody in the hospital has to stop on the board of the hospital, the management of the hospital, the wider public through the local media can say, are they doing what they should be doing? So thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Julia. Thank you for the inspiration you've brought to us all. As I say, Alzheimer's Society is about thriving off and enabling, inspiring people to do what they're doing. I think we are making a change on dementia in the way that the world has never seen before, and literally the UK is leading in the world. We need to stick with it. It's not going to be a passing thing. More people live with dementia today than ever before. It is, as Professor Peter Piot, who's one of the world's leading scientists, said, dementia is the global health time bomb. And unless we find better ways of supporting people in hospital and in wider society, we will have tragic experiences of people being lost, isolated, confused, alone, and despairing. What John's campaign shows is we can change that, and by working together, we can make the world a better place for everybody living with dementia. Thank you.